class, today we're talking about section 2.5, which is solving absolute value equations. By the end of today, you will be able to evaluate expressions involving absolute values and then solve the equations that have the absolute values within them as well. An absolute value is the distance a number is away from zero. So if you're looking at a number line, it's how far away it is from that zero marker. It doesn't matter if it's to the left or to the right. The key thing about absolute value is it is always positive. It doesn't matter if you are 5 to the left or 5 to the right. Both of those numbers have an absolute value of 5. So go ahead and take a minute and tell me which two integers have an absolute value of 34. The answer is 34 and negative 34. Both of those are 34 spaces away from 0. When we are looking to evaluate expressions involving absolute values, it's very similar to what you would do in the normal order of operations. You are just going to treat those absolute value bars, these two lines right here, as if they were parentheses. You need to solve those first. Solve within the absolute value and then continue the rest of the problem. So if I was going to plug in, I would have 4 times negative 3 minus the absolute value of 2 minus 7. So we're going to solve the absolute value first. And inside those bars, we're going to end up with a negative 5. So I've got 4 times negative 3 minus the absolute value of negative 5. Then we are going to actually take the absolute value. So negative 5 is 5 spaces away from 0. So I end up with 4 times negative 3 minus 5. Doing my multiplication, I end up with negative 12 minus 5 for a final answer of negative 17. Go ahead and take a minute on your own to try this problem. You should have gotten a final answer of 9, making sure that you are solving that absolute value first. If you have questions about this, please let me know when you get to class. Then we're going to talk about how we actually solve equations that involve absolute values. When we are doing this, we have two cases. Your first case is going to be the expression as written. So your first case, we're looking at m minus 9 is equal to 15. Your second case with absolute values is m minus 9 is equal to negative 15. Remember what we talked about just a couple of minutes ago. The absolute value of 15 is equal to 15, and the absolute value of negative 15 is equal to 15. Since we just have 15 as our answer, we don't know if they're talking about the positive case or the negative case. So we have to solve to find both of those possible answers. So if I finish up solving case 1, I'm going to add 9 to both sides, and I end up with an answer of m is equal to 24. If I finish solving on the second side, I'm again going to add 9 to both sides, and I end up with an answer of m is equal to negative 6. So I've solved both cases the same way. Just to double check, if you wanted to, you could go back and plug in those answers. So I have the absolute value of 24 minus 9, which gives me the absolute value of 15, which is indeed equal to 15. Checking out the second case, I can plug in and do negative 6 minus 9, which is equal to the absolute value of negative 15, which again is 15. So those are your two answers. The next thing that you'll be asked to do is to put that solution on a graph. In this case, your graph is just going to be a number line. You're going to want to put 0 into the middle, and then our answers were 24 and negative 6. So we want to make sure that both of those fit on our graph. I'm going to count by 6s. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, etc. And same thing on the negative side. Make sure that you are counting by the same values going up and down. So in order to graph this solution, our first answer was 24. So we would put a dot at 24, and our second answer was negative 6. So we would have a dot at negative 6. Go ahead and solve this problem using case 1 and case 2. So you should have gotten your first answer to be 15 and your second answer to be negative 22. If you have questions about how we got there, please let me know when you get to class. The graph of this particular problem would look as follows. Our first answer is at 15, that's the answer on the right, and the one on the left is at negative 22. Final example, we have absolute value of 7x plus 19 is equal to negative 52. Take a minute and think about what is different from this problem compared to the other ones we've done. You should notice that there is a negative as part of the answer. Absolute values cannot equal a negative number. So if you ever have an equation with absolute value equal to a negative, the answer is no solution. It is not possible to have an absolute value equal to a negative number. Last thing we're going to talk about with our absolute values is how to go from the graph to the equation. So they're giving us the solution graph and they want us to figure out the absolute value equation. There are a few steps that you need to do here in order to solve this problem. First thing we need to do is find the middle. So we need to find what number is going to be in the middle of our two answers. We can do this by adding up our values. So I have 31 plus 24, and then I'm going to divide that answer by 2. So I end up with 55 divided by 2, which gives me 27.5. So that is our middle value. The next thing we need to do is figure out how far apart it is from either of the endpoints to the middle. It should be the same amount for both of them. So I can do this by doing 27.5 minus 24, which gives me 3.5. I can double check that by then doing 27.5 plus 3.5, and that should give me my other answer, which it does. So our distance between the points is 3.5 on both sides. To find the final equation, you are going to use the formula x minus the mean. So that middle number is the mean, is equal to the distance. That's how far it is between the point and the mean. So our final equation for this problem would be the absolute value of x minus 27.5 is equal to 3.5. Go ahead and try this problem on your own. You should have ended up with a final answer of x. The absolute value of x minus 15 is equal to 4. If you have questions about this or anything else we covered in the lesson, please let me know when you get to class.